Hello and welcome to another episode of 7th Tier Podcast, a weekly Storybook Brawl podcast focused on strategy and high-level play. My name is Jethro, and I am joined this week and every week by your friend and mine, the best Storybook Brawl player with a decent audio setup. It's Sythesys! Sith, how's it going?
Yeah, it's good. Apologies for my quality last week, but we are back on my usual mic. Probably sounding, my lovely dulcet tones.
That crisp, clear audio sound that we know is why all the listeners choose 7th Tier. We've got a very special episode for you this week. We are going through every single treasure in the game, and we're gonna grade them. We're gonna grade them on our 6-point scale. But before we get to that, we need to go over the stats from the last 7 days. Sith, how's the ladder been treating you?
Yeah, it's been alright. Obviously, we had a reset. I've ended up about 1 game off Mythic, but, not too bad for a few days played.
Ooh.
I've had an average finish of 2.88. I've had 25 top 4s, 17 crowns, 33 games overall. I will say, this patch in general, and kind of this week as well, I've been way more than normal. I've got a ridiculous number of firsts compared to my other finishes. I didn't come 5th this week. Ever, but I've got 17 firsts. It's I think in part that's Horde Dragon. Horde Dragon has a 100% top 4 to first ratio still.
And because of the way hero offers work, you get offered a Horde Dragon 1 in 8 games.
Yeah, exactly 1/8 of my games are Horde Dragon, because I never pass him. Yeah, Horde Dragon, sometimes you die in the early game. I've definitely had that. You get to 4.0 without a treasure, despite your best efforts. You've had these 2 mice the whole time and it hasn't panned out, and you kind of die. But if you ever get out of that mid-game, you win every time, has been my experience. I think Horde Dragon's extremely busted. I would really like to see him nerfed, probably with that 5 health reverted. But, yeah.
He'd still be a good hero on 40 health.
Absolutely.
It wouldn't be unplayable.
Absolutely. Otherwise, nothing especially stands out. Trophy Hunter has been better than I was expecting it to be on this patch. I really thought Trophy Hunter would move down a lot. They did, because they were the lone S tier on the last patch. But actually, even without Good Boy, turns out Grim Souls and Baba Yaga's triggering any effect 15 times wins the game. You can do it with a big mummy, you can do it with a monster book.
I've seen some boards where there's just a big mummy and they just gun you down on turn 1 or turn 2.
I really enjoyed the game where I played with monster books, and by the time I hit tier 6, my Storm Kings were 200/200s already. Ooh. Because, no hat, no ball, just monster book triggering 12 times a turn is a whole lot of spells. So, yeah, I quite like Trophy Hunter. They still have that problem of they don't have an early game unless they find a mummy or a lucky. But, I think Trophy Hunter has been better than I was expecting on this patch.
Could they give Horde Dragon's health to Trophy Hunter, or would that be insane?
Don't give Trophy Hunter more health, please.
But everyone likes Trophy. Give Celestial Tiger more health. Give the health to the heroes that people like playing. My last 7 days on the ladder have been pretty good. I've had 41 games with 11 crowns, 27 top 4s. So not that crown conversion rate that you manage somehow week after week. For an average finish of 3.39. Still chasing down at that below 3 that's been elusive. Doesn't look like we're going to get there this month. But as always, Mark.
It's not quite my best ever crowns to bottom 4 ratio, but it's up there. Just looking at my stats.
For the listeners, because I said the other week we weren't going to add a crowns to bottom 4 ratio, but then Matt's added one just to make sure he can calculate his every week on the fly. So, on to our main topic this week, because we've got a lot to get through. We're going through all 75 treasures in the game. We're going to be mapping those to a tier list, which you can find in the show notes. And we're going to be ranking those on a 6-point scale from S tier all the way down to F tier. Do you want to walk us through what the letters in this scale mean?
Yeah, absolutely. So start with the addendum. Almost all treasures are a little bit context dependent. Even the worst treasures can sometimes line up in a way that they're extremely powerful with your current board setup. But we're talking in a very general way. When you see this treasure, are you excited? Are you not excited? And which ones should you be which ones are worth working towards and creating a game plan around, and which ones should you basically just ignore or maybe even skip? So starting with S tier, this is a composition in its own right. So this will be a lot of the tier 7 treasures will end up in this. There are comps that you can only ever make work if you have one of these S tier treasures. Even if you don't even have a comp, they are strong enough that you can just pivot around those and make a whole thing work. So that's S tier. A tier, a little bit worse, but still extremely powerful. These are the treasures that you'll see more often, generally speaking, and often you'll spend the game thinking about and building a game plan around. So in the past, round table might have been this. When trees were the meta, you would spend a lot of your game going, okay, cool, I'm going to get to tier 6, I'll find round table, that's my whole game plan. That's no longer true because round table's a tier 7 treasure, but that's the kind of thing that will end up in A tier. Things you're thinking about every single game. B tier, this is more treasures that are solid. They're really you're happy to see them at whatever stage of the game, but they don't warp the game completely. You are excited to see them. You're moving in. You're often trying to make the most of these treasures, but they're not so exciting that you need to shift what you're doing completely. C tier treasures, these are a little bit below rate. These are fine. Like, you're still happy to have them rather than not, but you're not going to change what you're doing to make this happen. Power Orb is the kind of thing I think of as exactly a C tier treasure. It's solid. I like +1/+1 to my team. Does it affect any of my decisions? Nope. I'm just a little bit stronger, and that's fine.
Powerful in combat, but it's not affecting the decisions in game.
Yeah. Like, it's a little bit of stats. It'll win me, it'll give me a 5% extra to win my fights or whatever, but it's not huge. D tier, these are bad, mostly. These will either be synergistic pieces where the synergy isn't meta or doesn't come together that often, or pieces that just never provide that many stats. A lot of the tier 2 treasures are going to end up in this tier. They're inherently designed to be quite weak, and that's fine. Like, we are ranking these treasures, agnostic of their tier. So tier 2 treasures are going to end up lower on this list than tier 7 treasures, and that's fine. So yeah, a lot of the early game treasures are going to end up in D.
While you're not going to have to pick between a tier 2 and a tier 6, you are going to have to pick which treasures to replace. You've only got those 3 slots for the whole game, so it is worth knowing which tier 2s and 3s you want to hold on to and which ones are actually going to fall off in the late game.
Yeah, exactly. There are definitely some tier 3 treasures that I would not replace with some tier 5 treasures, and that is the kind of thing that this list is going to help evaluate. And finally, we've got F tier. These are treasures that are usually worse than the 2 gold you get for skipping treasures. Again, there is no treasure that I think is always in this category. There is one treasure that I think is always in this category. Almost a lot of, again, this is going to be a lot of the tier 2 treasures that fundamentally don't, without the context of I happen to be in this comp or I am a hero that directly synergizes with this treasure, a lot of them are going to end up in F tier.
I was going to say, you can think of Skip as the very bottom of C tier, I would say.
What was C? Ooh. Yeah, okay. I think that's probably fair. 2 gold's pretty good.
Exactly. I mean, it's context dependent. Obviously, if that 2 gold is just 2 rolls of the shot, it's not worth as much as in the early game when it can be worth an extra unit on your board.
Yeah, I think that sounds like our tier list, our grade system even. And we're, unlike most of the time, we're actually going to start at tier 7 here, rather than starting at the beginning of the game. We're going to start at the end because tier lists tend to start at the top.
Turns out the tier 7 treasures are all quite good. Kicking this off with the Black Prism.
Yeah, so Black Prism is one of the most interesting ones. So it's going to be between S and A. The Black Prism is extremely powerful, but it's quite unpredictable how good it is. Sometimes when you get it, the turn you get it, it won't do anything if you've already cast a spell, such as, like, for example, if you get it off an Evil Twin giving you a triple when you had a treasure map or something, you've already cast a spell that turn, you can't use the Black Prism that turn, and having a tier 7 treasure that doesn't do anything on the turn you buy it is terrifying.
Spending a turn coming online is a long time in the late game.
For sure. But if you already have Crystal Ball, or already in Mages, it is out of this world. Every single spell is going to cast 10 times, and that's 10 triggers for Aeon, it's 10 triggers for Wizard's Familiar, it's 10 triggers for Storm King. Even if it's like nonsense, +2 attack for this combat, 10 spells is a ton if you're already in that comp. And if you're not in that comp, you can still do a lot of really interesting and very unique things. I don't know if you've ever played All My Dwarves Are Good, but, suddenly you're doing some really interesting things. If you ever cast Evil Twin, you can suddenly triple all of your units. If you've ever cast Croc is the classic. You cast Croc, and then you suddenly get 3 more tier 6 treasures most of the time, and a ton of extra weirdly distributed stats. I think Black Prism probably ends up in A because it doesn't do anything the turn it comes into play, and you need to find the spell afterwards. Like, it's often the turn after I find Black Prism, I spend a full turn looking for an Evil Twin or a Knighthood or any of these high impact spells, and if I end up just casting Flourish, good spell, +7 health for my team. +7 health for my team is not a tier 7. It's certainly not an S tier treasure. It's good, but it's not game defining. So I think A is it's about right.
I think the Prism ends up in A because as a tiebreaker, we use comparisons to the other treasures in that tier, and it's just not as good as the rest of tier 7, even though it is above anything from tier 5 or below.
Yeah, for sure. Tier 7 in particular comes with the addendum of there is no way to like naturalistically get a tier 7 treasure.
Unless you're Horde Dragon.
Yes. You have to put the effort in either with, a treasure that boosts treasures or by being Horde Dragon or something. Like, if you've got a tier 7 treasure, you've worked for it and you need that reward to win you the game probably immediately. Like, you've probably sacrificed quite a lot to get there. So.
You've almost definitionally 2-for-1'd yourself, right? You've had a treasure previously that you skipped on by taking a treasure map, so that now you could get a tier 7 treasure. Next up is Excalibur. This has to be S, right? This is comp in its own right.
My inclination is more that it's A, because there are times when, like, very often when I'm offered Excalibur, I feel I can't take it. If it's your first treasure, or like your previous treasure with a treasure map or whatever, trying to spend the whole game with Excalibur and nothing is really scary.
Oh, Excalibur makes it so much easier to finish any quest.
I mean, that's true.
Like, as Celestial Tiger, if I get an Excalibur early, like, I can still finish a Lancelot and a Hercules that game.
That's certainly true. The other issue is it does have that Black Prism issue of, if I end my turn by getting the triple that gives me a treasure, Excalibur has done nothing. Has done absolutely nothing. I then need to roll, find units, and it is often a pivot, right? Like, Excalibur, one of the most powerful things you can do is try and get, like, Golden Baba Yaga, Golden Yhorm, right? You need 2 golden units, or, Golden Lordy and some dwarves. Unless you're not going to spend the whole turn rolling for the tier 6 unit that happens to line up with your comp, you often want to do a little bit of pivoting, and I think that's just a little bit too slow for me to put it in S. I do think it's, it's a tier 7 treasure. It is extremely busted, but I think the S tier is for treasures that come online, instantly change the game, always provide a ton of stats, and are really, really good. And I just don't think Excalibur gets there.
I think you're right. I think it's more similar to Black Prism in that you actually need the right units, the right golden things to pay it off.
If you have it for any turns at all, you're going to do great. But if it's, I need this treasure to win me the game, or, for example, if you get it off Pandora's box or whatever, right? You sat there, you've probably lost a fight because you were down a treasure. Please stabilize me. I've only got 12 gold to find a comp from even these golden units. You want a little bit more time. So I think A is right.
Next up, we have Fairy Queen's Wand. Is this a C?
No, it's got to be a B. Like, it's obvious that we're going to have weaker treasures than Fairy Queen's Wand higher up than it, because this is context dependent. Like, Fairy Queen's Wand is definitely, obviously, better than Monkey's Paw. But Monkey's Paw is a better treasure, because Monkey's Paw comes online way earlier in a way more relevant part of the game, and whereas Fairy Queen's Wand is a really disappointing treasure in the late game. +5/+5 is a very small amount of stats by the time everything's tier 6.
Even if you're doubling and tripling down on it, it's not going to make the difference in those fights.
Yeah, absolutely. If you're brand new to the game and you think you're better than the competition, I certainly got a lot of dust while getting to Legend for the first time by playing Horde Dragon and consistently assembling Fairy Queen's Wand Mimic. But that's nothing. Obviously, the finance, the dust element is irrelevant for strategy.
It's generosity as well. Even if you don't think you're going to win the game, maybe you've been offered, Fairy Queen's Wand, Holy Grail, Black Prism. You're not going to win this game anymore, but you can give more dust to the community. It's a charitable donation.
Sure. Yeah, I think B tier. And again, this is why we're mostly tier agnostic, but it is super worth highlighting that one in particular, for tier 7s in particular, you have to mention it's below average for its tier.
Next up, we have Magic Sword +100.
This is the definition of S. Like, not only are there a bunch of units that directly become game breaking with it, Tweedledee, Doom Breath, these units that are like, wow, this unit went from medium to busted with
Baby
a +100
Bear.
attack. Even Baby Bear. And pumpkins
Good
as well.
Boy.
Especially Good Boy. Yeah, absolutely. Good, +100 attack Good Boy was a comp in and of itself for a long time.
Yeah, back when this was tier 6, that was a strange time.
And I would still do that if I had a +100 sword. I would try and pick up good, that is a direction I would pivot towards potentially. It's very, very strong. Good with most of the meta comps at the moment. Yeah, S tier, kind of the definition of it.
It has that immediate impact that we're talking to, that we really value.
Absolutely. There is no comp that won't be very happy to have a +100 sword.
We've made this investment and it's paying us off. Next up is Mirror Mirror.
I think this also has to be S tier. Like, not every comp gets insane value out of. Like, it always does something, right? it's always nice to be able to have your units resummon. Some units benefit much, much more. It's insane with scam comps. Medusas and Rotten Apple Trees are bonkers with Mirror Mirror. Storm Kings are bonkers with Mirror Mirror because they summon with their full stats rather than as a 1/1, so they're just huge. Obviously, if you're in, like, good or something, I mean, Good Boy is really good with it, unfortunately, but if you're in just, like, Slay is actually a really good example. Grim Souls work really well, but, like, Lancelot coming back as a 1/1 is irrelevant. Maybe you'll get that extra treasure, but it's not always instantly an S tier treasure, but it is often enough, and the ability to build comps that are ridiculous. Like, Medusa, Apple Tree without pumpkins is a joke, but is a game-winning comp with Mirror Mirror. Good Boy in general is a joke, but game-winning with Mirror Mirror. And I think it has to be, it's definitionally Esther. It's extremely good.
I want to say that sometimes it's a downside. Is this just me spouting nonsense?
No, I have definitely had opponents usually who've had Mirror Mirror where they had units in their back row that really wanted to attack, and it was really awkward for them that they were summoning 1/1s without text that were attacking, wasting their attack slots, and being awkward. You do have to, once you've got the Mirror, do change your comp to make it work. Don't keep doing what you're doing and assume that having 4 extra 1/1s worth of stats is anything. Even if that just means, like, a Grumble Gore, just make them 10/1s so they have good trades. Like, it doesn't take much, but I have had it be downsides for my opponents for sure. The other thing, it's not relevant a lot of the time, but the fact that it can farm other treasures, because a Hercules comes back as a fresh copy, if you can, give that Hercules plus 100 attack from a 100 attack sword or from a Good Boy or whatever, I have definitely had games, mostly as Horde Dragon, where I've had, like, 5 treasures off my Herculeses because of Mirror Mirror.
Ooh.
And that's
You just had every level 7
I have actually had every level 7 treasure. So
if you run out, does it start offering you level 6s?
It does.
Yeah, similar to Black Prism in that way, that it can function as a meta treasure, giving you a bunch of other treasures.
Yeah.
Next up, we have, speaking of meta treasures, we have Holy Grail. How do you feel about 1,000 gold?
This ends up S rather than A, although it has it always takes that turn to come online. It's often the one that when you get off Pandora's box, you are the most terrified because you've already waited 1 turn and now you have to wait another turn. Oh god. But if you can be not dead and you practiced, it is definitely a treasure that warrants practice. It is very easy to turn infinite money into any comp you want. A suite of tier 6 treasures. I think Holy... It's almost certainly the worst it's ever been right now, because...
Oh, that's interesting.
Because a lot of the comps aren't... Like, the best comps in the game are, like, Dwarves and Scam, and neither of those are looking for just hit me with all the 6-drops. And nor are they, Scam in particular is not looking for 1 6-drop in particular, right? There's no, like, Doom Breath is good in Scam, but Pumpkins is tier 5. And although, yes, you can still find tier 5 units, if I've got infinite money, I also want infinite tier 6 treasures, and looking for Pumpkins is, like, you get less advantage from buying 3 pumpkins than you would from buying 3 6-drops, because you've saved less money overall.
Sure, this might just be a difference in our APM. I had an early Holy Grail as Celestial Tiger the other day, and instantly moved into Scam and was very happy. Like, I ended that turn with a golden pumpkin, and I was on tier 5. Like, I wasn't getting any 6-drops. I just bought a lot of 5s, and it meant that I got Monkey's Paw and Mimic.
Yeah, that sounds great.
And that's what you really need with Scam as well. You need to double down on all these stats.
And the fact that you can do that on tier 5 is probably a big upside to Holy Grail. Holy Grail has always been one of those classics, oh, I'm not tier 6 yet, what the hell do I do with this Holy Grail money? The fact you can buy as many 6-drops as you want, you offer Knighthood on that turn, you just get a ton of stats from Holy Grail, and although it takes a turn to come online, I think the fact it should be, if you practice, definitely getting the best of the best comps puts it in S tier, rather than A. Prism sometimes takes a turn to come online, and then doesn't always get there. Holy Grail should always get there. You have so much money.
Yeah, it is enough money to consistently get there. You just need the practice. I got to mention Piggy Bank as well if you want to play a completely different game.
Yeah.
Next up we have How the Mighty Have Fallen, the Round Table.
This probably ends up in B as well. Round Table is often textless. The good units in the game are often round stats. Your units tend to, dwarves and stuff tend to be 100s, not 250s. That's just not the way stats are distributed very often in this game. You can get synergies, make it really work. Shoulder Fairies with no evil unit is always a fun one, that sort of thing.
Nice.
Mages actually benefit a ton. Your Spell Weavers and stuff are often 210s. and would love to be 200/200s. And trees is the obvious one, though I don't know how you've ended up. You know, if I've had a round table, I might head towards trees, but I don't know how you naturally bin trees on this patch. Yeah, the fact that it's a complete miss with some comps, and the fact it only triggers at the start of the game, so it's not even good with summons and stuff. If you're in like Bear Steam comp, like too often it's textless, and it's no longer the best of the best. Like roundtable trees is not the strongest thing you can do in the game. It was for a while. I just don't think that's true now that they've changed how Shoulder Fairies and stuff work.
It's worth noting Echowood still sees round table trigger, unlike Shoulder Fairies. Like, it will see the benefits going to your units as they gain this power and this toughness.
Echowood is the powerful thing to do for sure. And if you can do like Mimic round table or like Singing Sword round table, you can have a really good time. But your tier 7 treasures shouldn't need synergy with other treasures to be exciting. I think that puts it in B.
Yeah, that concludes all of our tier 7 treasures, taking up the S, A, and B slots. Moving down into tier 6, we start things off with Embiggening Stone. I have no idea where to put this one.
Yeah, this is an interesting one. Because this depends on the time you get it. If you are tier 6, it is not a treasure that you want. If you have got a tier 6 treasure early, for any reason at all, any reason, it is S tier. It is crazy how good Embiggening Stone is at any stage other than at tier 6. Because the size of the units you can assemble is very, very strong. Like, any unit, any tier 2 or tier 3 unit that you triple is a 50-50. And, like, Tripley's, what, 135, 130? It's obscenely large.
Oh, yeah.
And, like, you can buy ranged units, and once you're at, you're at 10, 11, 12 gold, you can find 2 drops and 3 drop triples very consistently if that's the thing you want. Normally you don't bother, because why do you care about your 2 drop triples? But suddenly you do, and you'll find they are cheap, and you can do it.
We saw in the coverage the other week, the commentary team were very excited. They saw this person had Embiggening Stone, and they'd only just had it for like one turn, and we beat them up. And then later we came back to them, and they were like, "Oh, how many triplies? How many doublies? Let's see what their stats are like." And they were like, "Oh, it's only a tripled black cat. Oh no, wait, it's a 90-90. All our units are dead."
Yeah, exactly. Embiggening Stone is definitely one of the most on beta fans, hilariously. Yeah, I think Embiggening Stone overall ends up A because of that context dependent of it's an S tier at any time other than tier 6. At tier 6, there are just fundamentally more powerful. At that point, you have the ability to spend your money to find late game comps, and Embiggening Stone is not usually a big part of that game plan. Even if you're in Dwarves or something where Tripley is a unit you're looking for anyway, I need Lordies more than I need 100 Tripleys, because Lordies are more stats than that.
It feels to me like this is a B, because the synergy we're looking for is Embiggening Stone with Treasure Map, right? Is Embiggening Stone with Mice.
I can believe that. I can believe that it's a B. Yeah, like...
It's not synergy with your comp, which is interesting. It's synergy with the time in the game.
Yeah. Okay, I'm happy to put it in B. Like, B with a cat, like, it's an S/F. Like, that's a more true
accurate
description of it. S/D, it's better than Skip. But yeah, it's I think B is probably about right, because about 50% of the time when I'm seeing tier 6 treasures, it's not what I want at all. So yeah, I think that's about right.
Next up, in a very similar space, actually, we have Ivory Owl.
Oh, I think Ivory Owl is more consistently good. I think, like, Ivory Owl is about as good in that crazy early stage.
Yes.
It's probably not any unit that's getting like +6, +6, +8, +8 from this being in play for a few turns is just really solid.
Also great with doublies and triplies and tweedles.
Yep. The fact it's not great with pumpkins is definitely a downside to it on this patch. Like, when Good Boy was one of the default meta comps, like Copycat Good Boy, Ivory Owl was probably S tier, because Good Boy getting any stats at all was so valid. But I would say the comps right now do benefit a lot less from Ivory Owl on total. I still think it has to go in A. Like, the immediate impact is that it's not huge, but it's there. Like, it's 2 power orbs on the turn you buy it, and then after 2 turns, it's better. Like, it's as good as Fairy Queen Wand and stuff. Like, I think A tier feels about right to me.
That makes a lot of sense. Sort of obviously, Ivory Owl's great with scaling comp, because obviously all it's offering you is scaling, and what you want is units that are going to stick around. If you're Apocalypse, to give the extreme example,
Sure.
Ivory Owl's kind of garbage.
Yes.
They're getting it early. What you want is units that are going to stay with you, that are already being scaled by Heartwood Elder, that are already being scaled by their Slay triggers, and now you're doubling down on that. Slay's great as well, because it's giving stats to the support units that are kind of sucks.
Yeah, I was actually going to say, one of the times Ivory Isle can shine is when you're scaling 1 or 2 units and the rest of your comp is kind of small. Actually being able to bring up the Baba Yagas and the mermaids up to stats where they don't die to lightning bolts and stuff is a big part of what Ivory Isle is doing there, is making sure your whole comp is valid units. And I think that's where it can be good in Scam as well. You know, give your Medusas 6 attack, give your Apple Trees some power. Like, make your Doom Breath more consistently kill stuff.
Next up, we have Pandora's Box.
So, yeah, I think this... So Pandora's Box is worse than all of the Tier 6 treasures. The Tier 7 treasures, because it's a Tier 7 treasure with a turn of delay. It just has to be. I think that ends up putting it in B. I probably pick it like it's A.
It's just so much fun to find out what's in the box. Also, a Tier 7 treasure is better than a lot of Tier 6 treasures.
I think fundamentally what Pandora's Box comes down to is, do I need to find an S tier treasure to win this game? If you're in a comp that doesn't naturally lead itself to a dominant late game, or you've seen an opponent who has already found one of these A tier treasures that is gonna, you know, they're going to be very, very strong. Your out is to find something busted, like a 100 attack sword, then you need to take it. And often, because even the treasures that, like, things like Round Table, if you get a Round Table early enough, you can work towards it. So if it's early, I will often take Pandora's Box slightly higher. But I think B overall, it's mostly it's good, but it's kind of meme. and not no immediate board impact for a Tier 6 treasure is always disappointing. When I get Tier 6 treasures, it's often the end of, like, I'm often in the finals. I can't spend a turn tanking.
Yeah, if you're in the top 3 and you're against the Ghost, that's when you're taking the box.
Yeah, especially if you have to replace one of your current treasures that was giving you strength. It is often a power decrease to take it, and that's terrifying.
If you don't have an econ treasure to swap out because the econ treasures have fallen off by then, it's can be very medium. Next up, we've got Phoenix Feather. This might be S.
Yeah, I think it's either S or the top of A. This used to be a Tier 7 treasure before they moved it down. It's basically every comp is very happy to have it. Scam is a little less likely to use it than most, which is probably why it's S on this patch rather than it's A on this patch rather than S where it has been in the past. But some comps, like Slay in particular, oh god, like they've got one massive thing and it's gonna come back. It's a nightmare.
Yeah, comps that are building one giant Echo Wood, like.
The other reason I think that it's A rather than S on this patch is Rotten Apple Tree and Medusa are both extremely good against Phoenix Feather. Having what was a 700/700 but attacked into an Apple Tree, it comes back as a 701. Crap. Is really frustrating. And yeah, if you get Medusa'd, it doesn't do anything. So I think on this patch where Scam is so popular, Pumpkins are so popular, I think it has to be A rather than S. But I do think it is, without meta considerations, it is the strongest of the Tier 6 treasures. I'm always excited. Like, there is no comp where I'm not happy to have it, even if it's at its worst in Scam.
Looking at our definitions, like, it's got that raw power that you want from a 6-drop, that immediate impact, that big board impact potentially, but it's not a comp in its own right. It's more, this is just good. Speaking of getting some stats, next up we have Spear of Achilles.
I think this is another solid A. This one actually, again, probably gets a little bump because it's one of the best treasures with Pumpkins. Pumpkins is the comp that consistently attacks with a ton of units, and it has units that really benefit from these stats. Doom Breath in particular is one that would love to have +7/+7 when it attacks. And it is also mentioning it can be a comp in and of itself. I think Court Wizard Royals is not a comp I go very often at all, but honestly, if you have the Spear of Achilles, yeah, alright.
Getting toughness onto those Court Wizards can be so good. By the time your opponent's backline is attacking into yours, and you've got 47 toughness on a Court Wizard, you're just going to mow them down.
Absolutely. Like, yeah, Court Wizard is the only unit that can consistently attack 8 times in a combat, and Spear of Achilles would love to make that happen. Yeah, Spear of Achilles, just a ton of stats. Got to be A. Very happy to have it in A.
Does it push into S to be a comp in its own right like that?
No, I don't think. Like, having a B tier comp on its own doesn't put it into S. Like, if Court Wizards was the most powerful thing you could do, sure, but it's so far from that.
Next up, How the Mighty Have Fallen, 9th book of Merlin.
So 9th book is a comp on its own, right? It is, if you're mages, it's S tier, for sure. It is the best thing you can, like, possibly get, and it is a treasure that pushes you over the limit.
We didn't put Black Prism in S tier.
That's true. I'm not putting it in S. No way I'm putting it in S. The issue is that 90% of the time you're not mages, and this is unplayable. Like, you can't even pivot into it most of the time. You can't be like, oh, I've already got a Sporko, a Lady of the Lake. It's a tier 6 treasure. You probably, if you get it very early, you can pivot. I do think the raw power level puts it in B. Like, it's going to make my late game comps. If I get it early, I will completely change my game plan and warp to make myself a ninth book game. It's obscene with Mimic, like a lot of treasures. But the fact, I think Round Table is a really good comparison for it. I think it's almost exactly the same as Round Table, where some comps, it's the best possible, but most of the time it's actually garbage, and so that the ceiling is high enough that I'm putting it in B, but you do have to just not take it sometimes.
Yeah, I think we should put it slightly above Round Table because it's a 6, not a 7.
Yeah.
But at 6, it's still very pricey. Next up we have the Ark.
I think this meta is relatively interesting for the Ark. So pumpkins can't make great use of the Ark. You can, like,
it's okay, but you only get the stats once. It's not like Monkey Spore where you get it once on your first units and then again on the summon.
Yeah, it's only on your starting units, and there isn't a good evil 2-drop that you can just happen to play, right? You can't like good when Good Boy was the meta, you could play a Sure Shot and be okay with it because it's going to get the Good Boy stats and it's a ranged unit. That's fine. There isn't an evil equivalent. What, Black Cat?
What 3-drop do you play in goods? 3 was always the problem with goods.
Sure. Yes, that 3 was the problems with kids. But even then, you could find an evil unit and Beauty's influence it, right? That was often how you ended up by accident having a 3.
No, mate, just have a golden Trojan donkey. 6-drops fall out of it. It's fine.
But yeah, I would say in this meta, dwarves obviously is the really obvious example. They often have completely naturalistically 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Happens all the time. Slay can't really make it work. Slay is needs every single one of their slots, and playing a random terrible 2-drop is pretty bad. So I think this ends up.
The other classic comp it's good in is Royals, but Royals just aren't a thing on this patch. Yeah,
I think this ends up in B. Like, it is a ton of stats. It's not good early. If you get it and you're not tier 6 yet, it doesn't have text, and that's terrifying. It doesn't naturally build into any of the late game comps that I'm wanting to assemble on this patch, and it often doesn't turn on immediately. Like, the number of times, like, I have to take a power dip for a little bit where I'm like, I don't have a 3-drop. I need to spend a turn either rolling for a 3-drop or just playing the first 3-drop I found, this random garbage, in order to give the rest of my unit stats. So I think it ends up in B. It's a ton of stats, but it's not. The meta is hostile and it's not consistently strong enough that I think it ends up in B.
I think unlike Fairy Queen's one that it's next to, this is giving you enough stats to make a difference. Like, even in the late game, plus drops to the whole team is enough to be relevant, but it's just not reliable enough.
Yeah, the issue is that if you have to replace your 50-50 with a 2-1 to make that happen, then that total amount of stats is more comparable and more concerning.
Next up, we have the Singing Swords. This has to be an A, right? This has got that immediate impact, that huge quantity of stats.
Like, it's the best pumpkin treasure. Pumpkin really wants its units to have double attack. Doom Breaths, love it, obviously. You can double down on Grumble Gores and stuff and have a really good time. Dwarves is happy to have it. Tweedledee loves having Singing Sword, absolutely. Like, it goes really well in the current meta. It's extremely powerful on paper. It's the definition of A. Not game warping like the tier 7 treasures are, but really good. There's no comp that isn't happy to have it.
Next up we have Wand of Weirding. This feels like another synergy-based treasure, right? You'll know if you want it, like with
if you've got Hat Ball, it's insane. It replaces your fork, or is your fork, and it's really good. I will say, I think just taking it as, like, I can cast double Pigamorph sometimes is better than a lot of people give it credit for. I can double Kiss and just get my random 4-drop golden into a tier 6 golden is good enough. It often, as you said, doesn't have that immediate impact. A lot of the time when you get a treasure, it's at the end of your turn. That's just the natural way that treasures work out. You roll, you find the thing you want, you sell some units from your hand, and you buy the unit, and that's your turn. Sometimes the opposite happens. Sometimes you lock, and you start your turn with a treasure. But about, a decent amount of the time, you don't have any gold once you get the treasure. This can be really awkward. You can't get immediate impact out of it. And especially, to get good impact out of it, you need to be casting an expensive spell, like an Evil Twin, like a Pigamorph. And that's unlikely. I still think B is right. It's very strong. I'm not unhappy to see it. And again, when you happen to be in the comp that wants it, it is crazy. So
I agree with all that.
All of the tier 6 treasures have ended up in B or higher, which feels about right. I think that's just what you want from treasure design. You would really not want even the ones that are sometimes bad have a high enough ceiling that they earn their spot, and I think that's a really good place for treasures right now.
Yes, certainly if Evil Eye was still a
tier 6, it would be in a bad place. Yeah.
Moving down into tier 5, we're kicking things off with Ambrosia.
I think this ends up B on this patch, because
Because of the pumpkin synergy?
I think all three of the top comps, Pumpkin, Dwarves, and Slay, are in for what Ambrosia is offering. I want to put Lordy in that slot, I want to put Pumpkin in that slot, and I'm happy to put Baba Yaga in that slot. I can make that work. It's awkward, but I'll take it. Or even Yorm. Like, if my Baba Yaga's in slot 6, like...
Yeah, pop a Yorm in the back.
Yeah, I think Ambrosia is it's a lot like Hand of Midas, but more flexible. In the past, Hand of Midas I think might have been better. We're going to get to Hand of Midas in a moment, but Hand of Midas might have been better because Good Boy was a classic unit that I really, really wanted golden, but really couldn't play in slot 7. Like, when the best comp was Copy Boy, Ambrosia didn't help that comp, basically at all. It just didn't do anything. Now, all of the comps can make great use of their slot 7, and I think that puts Ambrosia in a really good place. Like, Pumpkins in particular, again, and Dwarves, like, the amount of power Dwarves get from Ambrosia would put it in A, for sure. Like, I don't think I can push it there, but I think it's closer to the top of B than the bottom of it.
Okay, I think I believe you. Next up, we have Dracula's Saber. This feels like the B to me. This feels like you're getting proper stats.
I think I put this in A. I think Drac Saber's up there with Ivory Owl in terms of the amount of stats it provides. It is a ton of stats. Any early, it's actually like the tier 5 treasure I want the most. Maybe Monkey's Paw, but it's an obscene amount of stats. It's very good in the current meta. The Pumpkin Mirror is one of those comps where Drac Saber is unreal.
True.
And facing against any pumpkin comp, even dwarves, like dwarves playing an Echo Wood, which is a very natural thing for dwarves to do, get a ridiculous... Echo Wood is extremely good with Drac Saber. Doublies, triplies, Tweedles get a ton of value off Drac Saber. I would put a Drac Saber in A. I think it is the best of the tier 5 treasures in a vacuum.
Okay.
I don't build a comp around it, but I think the amount of stats it provides at every stage of the game is really, really strong.
I tend to think of Drac Saber as a combo with ranged cards. I'm like, oh, Drac Saber, now I want Court Wizards or Baba Yagas. I want my back row to be ranged, pick up those stats as the front row dies, and then start trading off with things.
Sure.
I think of it as medium in dwarves.
The combo of Echo Wood getting the triply stats off it is a big...
Sure.
Without an Echo Wood, I agree that it's not that good in dwarves, but the fact that Echo Wood sees not only 6 units getting those stats, it sees like 8 units getting those stats because of the Tweedles and stuff.
So it's good in your dwarves if your dwarves have already got there? Or are you now taking Echo Wood without Lordy?
Yeah, I'd play Echo Wood without Lordy if I had a Drac Saber, for sure.
Okay. Next up, we have Evil Eye. I heard you like supports. This has to be B, right? You need the synergies.
This might even be C.
Because it's only good in pumpkins? Because it's not pumpkins,
No.
It's only good in Scam? Nope.
Yeah.
It's only good in Slay.
There we go, third time's the charm. Yeah, Evil Eye is an S tier treasure for Slay and completely, utterly unplayable for every other comp. Maybe you can pretend that Pup wants this. He doesn't. Stop it. Just play a good comp. Use your Pup for early game and then stop playing your supports. Unless you're Slay. The fact Slay can get this on tier 5 from their triple Barber, for example, is a huge part of why I like Slay so much on this patch. It is an actually busted combination of things. It is completely unplayable out of Slay. Slay is also not, the number 1 comp.
Yes. Though it might be if the rumours are true and Pumpkin gets nerfed.
And it doesn't... Your Slay comp doesn't always immediately love it. Like, if you've got only one Baba Yaga, it's still not doing that much. It's when it's a golden Baba Yaga or 2 Baba Yagas that this goes to the stratosphere.
When you can combine it with that Baba Yaga plus Mermaid, so you've got lots of Slays on one unit.
So yeah, I think the ceiling is S, but only when the stars align, and the fact that I skip it so often has to put it in C.
I think the other thing that bumps it down is you've got to compare it to these other tier 5 treasures, right? We just end up skipping it way more than, not for the skip, but for the other treasures that are on offer. Next up is Hand of Midas. I've got to talk to a mistake that I made recently in the game. I was dwarves, and I was choosing between a Hand of Midas and an Ambrosia, and I had Dwarven Forge. And I figured, I'll take the Ambrosia, because I'm going to end up using this to gold a unit. It's going to gold me a Lordy or an Echo Wood later, but this way I can pick other units in the meantime. I can pick up, an extra Doubly or an extra Angry if I need it. I think I should have taken the hand, because I wasn't going to be taking random dwarves at the late stages of the game, and the hand frees up that treasure slot when it golds the unit.
Yes, I think so. This is the main point of comparison. Is I think Ambrosia is generically more powerful. It allows you to still triple that unit if that's the thing you want to do, which sometimes it definitely is.
Yeah.
It kind of comes on online instantly, right? Hand of Midas can lead you to these really awkward situations where I was like, okay, I'm pumpkins. I'm going to try and just spend a turn doom rolling for a pumpkin and nothing else. Ah, shit, that's a Doom Breath. I would play a Doom Breath, but it's such a bad golden. I guess I keep rolling, and you spend 2 turns, you spend 24 gold, you don't find it, and you cry. Whereas if you had Ambrosia, you can still get stronger.
Hand is so much worse ahead of time as well. Like, if you're not upgrading a 6 or I guess a 5 drop, you're not doing anything, which can mean you end up with awkward turns in the middle.
And it comes with the caveat of sometimes you buy a chicken. Don't... No one has ever done that in the top 32 of a tournament, certainly not me.
I mean, Ambrosia comes with the caveat, sometimes you crock your pumpkin. I've definitely done that.
Yes, that is definitely awkward. Yeah, I think Ambrosia and Hand of Midas fill the same role. I think they both go in B tier. Right now, I would often lead to Ambrosia over Hand of Midas, but it's a little context dependent. I'm happy to put them in the same place.
Yeah, I think Hand of Midas slightly below, but it's a really interesting comparison point. Next up, we have Helm of the Ugly Gosling.
Yeah.
I think this is C. I think the rate on this is enough below what you want from tier 5. Obviously, we're going to put things that are smaller stats into C tier, but at the end of the day, this is the smallest stats that tier 5 offers us.
Yeah, I don't think it's down in D. I think Helm of the Ugly Gosling is by far the tier 5 treasure I'm least interested in once I'm tier 5. Like, you can do, certainly back when Copy Boy was a thing, I would take it more often and I would spend a lot of mental effort making sure it went on the right target. But these days, I can't make it so that my Tripley's getting this very easily. That requires impossible coordination. Can't make it so my Doom Breath gets it on pumpkins. It's going to go on my 2/2 pumpkin. It's not a huge amount of stats, and it doesn't go in the place that you want it most of the time. I think it's a pretty bad treasure. I think numbers-wise, it ends up in C, but it's really disappointing.
What makes it playable for me is that it has that instant board impact, right? If you've just tripled some mice on Horde Dragon, and you've had the start that we've talked about, where you've had those mice for too long, and you just need to catch up, there are boards and states of the game where a Helm of the Ugly Gosling will help you catch up on board. It's a 15-15 unit that doesn't take up a spot in your comp. That's good.
Absolutely. If Peter Pants gets his tier 5 treasure through some shenanigans, I think just the stats it provides is one of the better ones early, but the fact it's once you're at tier 5 it's already too late is a real mark against it. I think C is the best we can give it. It's pretty bad.
Next up, we have Mimic. I think this is an S. I think Mimic's doubling down on your other 2 treasures is so powerful. It can make treasures that are otherwise mediocre, like your 9th Book of Merlin, into absolute powerhouses.
Yeah, I think S is right. I've had games where Mimic has been my first treasure, and I've had a bad time. But it honestly speaks to the strength of Mimic that I was willing to do that.
Yes.
I picked Mimic over other tier 5 treasures because I thought, holy wow, Mimic is powerful. I can find anything, and I can make this really, really good. Even the tier 3 treasures, when mimicked, get so out of control. And I think Mimic's an extremely strong treasure. I think S is appropriate. I will highlight some treasures don't work with it. Ambrosia, Hand of Midas, Holy Grail, realistically.
Excalibur, Round Table, unless you're doing some nonsense.
Oh, do some nonsense, come on.
Pandora's Box, since they nerfed the interaction.
Yeah, that doesn't work. But yeah, I think often enough I think S tier is an appropriate, the fact is if it was a tier 6 treasure, I think it would just be A. The fact it's a tier 5 treasure, it really, it's so above its tier, I think S is appropriate.
Yeah. Speaking of so above its tier, we have Monkey's Paw.
This ends up in A. It both is extremely good with pumpkins in the current meta. I will say, as dwarves, I often take Monkey's Paw, and then once I have my Lordies, just stop enabling it.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel good to present 7 units Monkey's Paw, but do consider that if you have even one Lordie in play, any dwarf is already giving all of your doors +2/+2, and it's a unit itself getting
Yes.
+14/+14, that's like as much stats as Monkey's Paw anyway.
Yeah, the Monkey's Paw is only those 36 of stats. Plus, you double it for the doublies, you double it for the tweedlies.
Yeah. So, yeah, Monkey's Paw, just the fact it's so insane with pumpkins is really, like, pumpkins both doesn't mind having an empty space, because, especially if you have 2 pumpkins, you're summoning anyway, and you don't have 6 units getting those stats, you have 12 units getting those stats. It's extremely good, Monkey's Paw, and early in particular. If you ever face that Horde Dragon who on like 3.0 triples mice into Monkey's Paw, you're dead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that Horde Dragon has this lobby.
Yeah.
Hope that you've preserved enough life total to come second.
Yeah. Or even, Peter Pan's treasure, or any treasure map into a 5-drop, you're hoping for Monkey's Paw ahead of time. The stats are obscene. Yeah, Monkey's Paw, A tier for sure. The fact that it doesn't, like, most of the late comps end up replacing it means it can't be an S, but A tier is appropriate for sure.
Next up, we have our first real econ treasure, Staff of the Old Toad. I'm leaning towards B for this. This feels like you can't afford to take it unless you're strong enough to pass up on the strength of a 5-drop treasure, but it is going to reward you in the econ that it pays you back.
I think this treasure's in a really good place. Almost all of the... Dwarves gets the little caveat of you can no longer find doublies, but you want Lordies Echowards enough that that's fine.
There's Tweedledee now anyway. You don't need the doublies to double down on those stats.
Yeah, for sure. I haven't done the maths on the extent to which Staff of the Old Toad improves your ability to find a specific 2-drop, but I believe it's about a 50% increase. Like, it's a lot. You are much more likely, because there are more tier 2 and 3 drops than there are 4, 5s, and 6s, and it just... No, that's not actually true. No, there's more 2s and 3s than there are 5s and 6s for sure. Yeah, it really... It thins that pool out a lot. It makes getting other treasures easier. You often end up replacing it by tripling the 6-drop that it enabled you to find, and that's a great time.
Like with many econ treasures, you're not going to be Staff of the Old Toad forever. You're going to have it for a bit, and then get rid of it. And it helps you get rid of itself.
Which is really nice. Yeah, generally speaking, if you're already tier 6, it might be too late. Or at the start of tier 5, and you're strong, it's a great time to take it, ride that strength. And if you're Zelhua, pick it all the time. Holy god.
Everything is free. Next up, we have Sword of Fire and Ice. Is this another C? Are the stats just as small as Helm?
Yeah, I think for me it is. Like, it is a good, if you look at the total number of stats that Sword provides, just like in terms of the numbers, it's 24 toughness and
18 power.
Yeah, so it's 24 toughness and 18 power. That's a total of 42 stats. That is more than Helm, and it does work with summons, but they're distributed awkwardly and in ways that you often don't really want. Like, if you have an all-ranged backline, cool. Like, Mages is probably okay with Sword of Fire and Ice and stuff. Pumpkin does like Sword of Fire and Ice, because fundamentally it's summoning a bunch of units. It would like to make use of the stats. Bearstein would love to make good use of Sword of Fire and Ice. But I'm always disappointed when I take it. It can be bottom of B, because it is still a tier 5 treasure. It's still going to be better than all the tier 4 treasures.
Yeah, I'm just looking at how the list is assembled right now. We don't have a tier 5 stats treasure in B right now, and I think we want to differentiate this from Helm, but also keep it separate from Porv and Draxsaber.
Yeah, it's the bottom of B if it's in B. I think I'm fine putting it in B, but I think I'm never super jazzed to have Sword of Fire and Ice.
Up next, we have Coin of Charon, moving down into tier 4 now.
Yeah, Coin of Charon's an interesting one. It's one of these really time-dependent treasures. If you get it on 4.0, it's going to be 24 of stats. That's more than Sword of Fire and Ice. And you can potentially, there are certainly units that you can make really good use of this. The obvious one is something like Friendly Spirit, which actually makes it an immediate board impact, because the Friendly Spirit gets the Coin of Charon buff before its last breath, and so you are actually getting more stats. It does have, it doesn't have that immediate board impact, and if you're not careful, the stats are wasted. Like, on 4.0, a lot of those units aren't going to stick around, and if you don't attack first, and your slot 4 donkey or whatever dies first and gets the stats, you were going to replace that unit anyway. What a waste.
I think it ends up C because you want it early and it falls off.
Yeah, there are times Trophy Hunter really wants it. Charon really wants it to go with Lightning Dragons. It is very good with Lightning Dragons in general, because they always get the buff. But I think C is about right. It's a lot of stats, but only when the things work.
Moving on, we have Deck of Many Things. This is sort of the opposite, right? Tier 4, you don't get those high-level spells, but later on you do.
Yeah, for sure. I think it is exactly that. On tier 4, I would rather have something that's giving me immediate stats, because the stats are very big relative to the rest of my board. Later on, I would rather have a random spell, because the ability to cast Pigomorphs and Smites win me fights way harder than 18 total attack or something that you're getting from a Ring of Rage.
Yeah.
So I think
you're giving yourself those 1 and 2% edges.
yeah, I think this ends up in B because it is fine on that early tier. If you're in mages, it's obviously good, but even if you're not, the fact sometimes it casts Blessing Athena or whatever and gives you a little bit of scaling, the fact it can just randomly cast Lightning Bolt and win you a fight, solid. It doesn't have that many fail cases. Falling Stars can awkwardly give your opponent a bunch of attack or something, just trigger all that angry.
Especially against dwarves,
Yeah.
Oh, I gave my opponent 6 gold and +16/+16. This did not go well.
Yeah, I think often enough, the fact it's a good late game treasure that you can get on tier 4 puts it in B. I'm happy with that.
Speaking of dwarves, next up we have Dwarven Forge, which I think is a solid B. I think dwarves are so powerful on this patch. There have been patches in the past where dwarves needed the forge to function. Like, without it, you couldn't have enough gold units to have enough stats to play the game. These days, dwarves are so good that Dwarven Forge just accelerates you and punches the opponent for so much more damage in the late mid game.
I'm thinking about A. Because it's one of the only treasures in the game that I'm willing to spend a ton of effort manipulating myself to get. Crystal Ball's going to fall in this category as well, I think. Where, when I'm dwarves, I will buy random garbage 4-drop dwarves, like Greedies or whatever, that aren't gonna... Greedy isn't gonna go in my late game dwarf comp. It's not particularly good as a triple, but I'm buying Greedies like they're better than Angries sometimes, because I want this Dwarven Forge so much. Obviously, textless for the other comps. Awkward.
Yes.
Terrible. But the fact it's a tier 4 treasure, meaning the opportunity cost is much lower, compared to, Knight's Book, that's awkwardly on tier 6,
Yes.
and really expensive to speculatively try and assemble.
Yes.
It doesn't cost that much to get it, and when you get it, it does have immediate impact. When I buy Dwarven Forge, I immediately triple my whole board and get unbelievably stronger on that turn.
There are turns you can buy a Dwarven Forge, and then later that turn get rid of Dwarven Forge.
Yeah,
Because
I've done that. Yeah.
you just take it and then it's treasure, treasure, treasure. And similarly to start of the old tone, it helps replace itself. It's not going to be with you forever.
Yeah, once you've got 2 Lordies, get rid of it. I think Dwarven Forge ends up in A because the ceiling is through the roof, and it is game warping. I'm willing to do a lot of nonsense to make it happen.
I agree with that. Next up we have Fool's Gold. Econ, but you can't cast spells. Is this D? Is this just not good unless you're Loki?
Wow, are you that low on Fool's Gold? I'm quite high on Fool's Gold. I think I was thinking about B.
I cast spells so much.
Let's talk about the timing on Fool's Gold.
Yes.
So, if you get it early, during tier 3, with some mice or something, it's extremely good. It's one of the most powerful things you can do is Wonder Waddle off a pair of mice or whatever. It's completely busted really early, because it's double your gold. What? I'm happy to give up on spells to double my gold. That's crazy.
Yes.
I also think it's really good on 5.2. If you're about to hit tier 6, on tier 6, I no longer care about XP spells, and what I really want to do is find the 6 drops relevant to my comp. And 4 extra gold is a significant amount of extra rolls on that turn.
Okay. I'm less high on it on 5.2 because I tend to think I've had games where I've been locked behind a Fool's Gold. I've been like, oh, my out's Pigomorph. Oh no, wait. I guess my out is find a triple. And it's... I don't like that experience. It's harder to get triples in the late game. That's why 6-drop treasures are so good. It's because they're hard to assemble.
I think Fool's Gold does enough to help replace itself that it's okay there. I'm willing to put it in C because it does have that awkward timing restriction of it's not good late and it's not good early. Well, no, sorry, it's not good late and it's not great mid-game most of the time. Have the caveat of, as Loki, it's S tier. Holy shit, what a treasure.
Yes.
And again, if you get it off mice or whatever very early, it's even on 4.0. Honestly, on 4.0, if I have another treasure or whatever, if it's my first treasure, I'm a little less hesitant because it's going to be a pain to replace. But if you're at 7 gold, going to 11 gold next turn is still a massive increase in the amount of rolls you get. You can find the stuff. And then I don't mind that I can't find XP spells for a few turns. I wasn't that interested in combat spells in the mid-game anyway. I'll take it. I think C is more appropriate than D.
I'm sold. I'm sold that Fool's Gold actually has a place in the game. Next up we have Forking Rod. This feels like a B. This feels like you need the mage synergies in order to get it to pop off. Forking Rod and a Lightning Bolt isn't really going to be paying you back. But if you have them, then it's worth it.
I take speculative Forking Rods with no synergies higher than you might expect. So there's a few things.
Interesting.
If you get it early, 4.0 or whatever, the broken thing to do is find Masquerade Ball. When you fork a Masquerade Ball, it is actually bonkers, and can be a game-winning play. And I think Forking Rod enabling a game-winning play is a big part of its strength.
Yes.
If you end up with Hat Ball, it's a component on it. Like, it more than doubles the strength of Hat Ball, so it's often a treasure that I am focused on. You know, right, as Peter Pants, it's the only tier 4 treasure I want, as, you know, I will buy 4-drops to try and make Fork happen.
I want to mention it's very good with just Hat or with just Horn as well, because you get those cantrips, like... Doubling your coins or your healing potions can be a lot.
And getting Kiss into that fork range as well. I love forking Kiss. Yeah, I think B is appropriate, but I do think it's one of the best tier 4 treasures, even without too much synergy. Yeah.
Okay, I'll put it in the middle of B. I think you've sold me. Next up is the treasure I happen to know we disagree the most about. It's Gloves of Thieving.
I like it less than I used to, if that helps.
Kitty cat purse with extra steps.
It's not F tier, that's ridiculous. Okay, so Gloves of Thieving is much worse than it used to be for basically the same reason that Ambrosia's good now. So... Previously, when the best comp in the game was Copycat Good Boy, Gloves of Thieving were extremely good because you could steal other people's copycats, you could steal other people's Good Boys, because some people were playing front Good Boy, and Copycat Good Boy in particular was fairly happy to just have any good unit, and it didn't really matter, so stealing a big Lancelot or something was great. These days, there are 3 comps with basically no overlapping pieces, which means you often aren't stealing the relevant stuff. Scam in particular, like Pumpkins in particular, stealing the front row can just be bad. I really don't want my 3rd Medusa. Why have you done this to me?
Oh, you can finally take a 4-drop treasure and get rid of the useless Gloves of Thieving. You genius.
Dwarves. I mean, if you know you're in the Dwarves mirror, Lordies still don't go in the front very often. You're not stealing the key piece, you're stealing some random Tweedles and stuff, which is fine, but not exciting enough. I think there have been...
And also, the fact that there's another Dwarves player out there more than counters the fact that you've got to steal one Dwarf from them. Like, they're going to be hunting down your Lordies.
If you know you're in the mirror for the finals, I can take Gloves. I sometimes take Gloves. Genuine, like, that happened a lot more when it was Copycat Good Boy, where I was actively looking for Gloves as a way to get my more Good Boys.
Sure, that sounds to me like a bad synergy treasure.
Sure. I also think it's not the worst econ ever. It's pretty bad, but the times where you face a Merlin and you steal their random 2020, that's great. Like, it doesn't happen consistently, and as I said, the meta is relatively hostile to it, so I can't... I used to pick it like it was A tier, because I think in the Copycat Good Boy meta, it was so pivotal to winning that endgame. Just every time. It mattered a ton. I think it's nowhere close to that now. All the good units are in the back. D is appropriate.
Okay, if you're willing to allow D, that's fine. I was going to say I think we can put it next to Fool's Gold. It's because it's similarly very powerful early. I think if you triple Mice and take Gloves, it can give you direction in the mid game, which can be really good.
Yeah, for sure. And it's also one of the issues with tripling Mice early is you're down a bunch of units, right? You spent 6 gold on a 4/4. You want to make up that tempo. Stats often aren't doing it because you only got like 3 units.
Yeah.
But Gloves of Thieving can very quickly fill out your board. But yeah, I think C is probably fine. It's going to be like D is for the tier 2 treasures. It's better than those. C is fine.
Next up we have Moonsong Horn. I think this is top of C instead, right? Maybe Gloves of Thieving is D. Moonsong Horn feels a lot better than Gloves.
Interesting. Yeah, it is. Like, the main thing this does is make cantrips free. It gives you it gives you like 3 health from the healing potions you were gonna otherwise pass. It gives you like often you end your turn without having found a spell you want, and now you just cast whatever that random fireball. You weren't gonna cast a fireball ever, but it's free. Why not?
Yeah.
And the fact that it combos with Ball to enable mages is cool. It comes with a power orb built in. It's not embarrassing stats. It's never exciting, but it's solid. That sounds like C to me.
It's worth picking up for that little bit of stats. It's the little bit of both things that I think pushes Moonsong Horn over the edge.
Cool. Next up we have Reduplicator. Now this is a treasure that is surprisingly like this meta really helps. Tweedledee is a unit that massively benefits from Reduplicator. If you can get one large Tweedle and position it so that there will be space for it to summon two, not only do you get those extra stats and extra time, getting an extra summon for Echowood in the backline can be really nice, especially as Dwarves are a comp that wants Echowards. outside of dwarves, you can definitely have a mid-game Romeo-Juliet plan with a duplicator. The issue is that comp falls off so quickly that once you're committing a tier 4 treasure to it as well, you're kind of gonna... You can't stay in Romeo-Juliet forever, and taking a treasure that is only realistically good if you stay Romeo-Juliet is terrifying. That's something I would avoid doing. It technically has text with pumpkins, but it's pretty nothing. And it has good synergy with some other treasures. It works really well. It works very well with Phoenix Feather. Works okay with Mirror sometimes. And it's good with Bearstein and stuff. Geppetto, that sort of thing. I think it ends up being a little narrow, and but the ceiling's there. I think it ends up in C. It's, you know, when I'm excited, I know most of the time I'm not even looking at it. It's just textless. I think. And the ceiling is never the ceiling is not often enough. I'm copying my Phoenix Feather. So I think Reduplicator ends up in C, and that's fine.
Makes sense to me. Next up, we have Ring of Rage. These are your classic Cs, right? Ring and Six of Shields. They're just the right amount of stats I want for a 4-drop treasure.
Yep. Again, they have this timing restriction. On 4.0, they're a ton of stats, and by 4.2, they're much less good. It is very quick that these change in power. I think Ring of Rage is a good pumpkin treasure that will often stick around. Again, pumpkin is going to have 14 units getting 3 power out of this, and fundamentally those units are trying to trade up as much as... Pumpkin is often about count, can I count to the total amount of toughness on my opponent's team? And in the way that, +3 health doesn't really help, all your units are still trading down, whereas Ring of Rage does really help with that. Whereas Dwarves, I think, wants the health more, because...
Your Angries want to trigger as much as possible. Your Greedies want to trigger.
Yeah, and Tweedles would rather... If you already got square stats, you want more health. So yeah, I think both in C is about right. They're what I would expect from a tier 4 treasure. They're not great early. They won't stay late. They're good for a tier 4 treasure. Perfect.
Next up is Sky Castle. I think this is current meta. This is a trap, right?
Yeah, for sure. Princesses are in a terrible place. This is a bit of a weird case. The times I've taken Sky Castle recently have been when I've had an early tier 4 treasure or something like a mice. And the other treasures I have been offered have offered me nothing. They've been things like Reduplicator or Horn of Olympus or something, just actually textless. Yeah. And I've been like, well, I guess I got this sure shot on this Cinderella. I'll take +8/+8 to my board because it's still tier 3. It's 3.0, and I'll take the stats for right now. That's basically the only time I've ended up in Sky Castle recently. Miri wants it, I guess, but are you playing Miri on this, Pat? Yeah, Royals are in a really rough place. If you triple your Arthurs, take it. But how did you get here?
Yeah, what are you doing here? It's worth noting if you've got... This is such a niche scenario I'm laying out, but if you're something like Horde Dragon getting the Brave Princess and there's a Nutcracker in the shop, the Sky Castle's going to help with things like achieving quests. Yeah,
we described D as bad synergy, and this is the quintessential bad synergy.
Yeah. Speaking of synergy, though, Summoning Portal, this has to be B, right? Is this pushing A because Pumpkins is so good?
Can I get you to A? I think Summoning Portal is a treasure. I don't know if my ideal pumpkin board... I think my ideal pumpkin board probably has a Summoning Portal as part of it. I had a game recently with Mimic Summoning Portal with pumpkins, and honestly, I could have had 2 pumpkins and no other units in my, actual just trash. By the end, my summoned units were getting +34/+34. What on earth?
Yeah, okay, that is some nonsense.
Once you have 2 pumpkins, it is out of this world. It is comp dependent. It doesn't do anything in Dwarves. It doesn't do anything in Slay. But the fact that pumpkins is the best comp, and because it's a tier 4 treasure, this is the thing. When your direction comes at tier 4, I can pivot. If I...
In the same way that Bad Moon lets you pivot to Slay on tier 4.
Yeah. The fact that if I'm in Dwarves, looking for my Dwarven Forge, and instead I see Summoning Portal, it's not too late for me to go, okay, cool. And now if I see a pumpkin, I can pivot in that direction. It's going to be a little rough, because there's no... As I said, the 3 comps in this meta have no overlap in a way that's awkward. But Summoning Portal is a treasure I'm actively looking for if I'm pumpkins. It's the main reason I don't triple my Medusas very often, but I think about it a lot. because Summoning Portal is such a high roll for that comp.
Yeah, you actually have a 4-drop you're looking for. Next, we have Horn of Olympus.
I have come down on Horn of Olympus a lot. I really, really like Slay. It is a good Slay treasure. But it's not a great Slay treasure in a way that I thought it was. It's not Evil Eye. Fundamentally, when it's good, is when your backline is exactly Barber, Barber, Mermaid, or Mermaid, Mermaid, Barber.
Yes.
And if your backline is anything else, you triple that Barber, and now you have one Mermaid, one Barber, and a thing. It's no longer a very good treasure. It is only good with a very specific backline, and like it can be not embarrassing stats with a Sporko and a Lady of the Lake back there. But wait, yeah, it is. That's like that giving you Sporko plus 10 extra stats and Lady of the Lake plus 10 extra stats. That's still kind of nothing.
This might be a question, the answer to which is just do a load of math. But the other day, I had a Slays comp, where I actually had Gloves of Thieving into an opponent's Lightning Dragon, which was great, but we don't need to talk about that. Had a Slays comp, I've got Big Lancelot, I've just tripled some Grim Souls, and my backline is Golden Mermaid, Regular Mermaid, Baba Yaga, which was unupgraded at the time. And my treasures at the time were Evil Eye, Mimic, Bad Mood. And I felt very happy with my life. But I tripled these Grim Souls and I was offered Horn of Olympus.
No chance.
And I ended up replacing the Mimic with it.
Yeah, no chance. Not for me. No way.
The combination of a Baba Yaga and because I can only get that on one unit, or I guess 2 units with the way I've set up. On 2 units without the Horn of Olympus. With it, I get it on all of the units. It's so many more triggers. And I can't get it on Unit 1. Unit 1's going to attack first or second after the Lightning Dragon. And I can't get a Baba Yaga and a Mermaid.
I just don't care that much if my Grim Souls have Mermaid and Baba Yaga. Like, usually
the way lot if my Shadow Assassin does.
Nah. Like, usually the way my Slay comps work is I have one unit that naturally has Slay, whether that's a Lancelot or a Chupa or a Yorm, I guess. Like, one unit that naturally has Slay, often another unit that doesn't and really wants the Mermaid, whether that's Lightning Dragon or just a Shadow Assassin, some other unit that really wants the Mermaid. So I get one unit gets the Mermaid and Yaga, one Slay unit that just gets the Yaga, and that's fine. And then the other front line is like Grimsoul, or Grimsoul Yorm, or Shoulder Fairies. Like, it's a bunch of units that don't care that much whether they're scaling, because that's not the point. Usually Slay is about scaling 2 massive units, and that means I don't need... Like, you definitely can have a board of just like 4 big things, no Grim Souls, 4 things that are all good at slaying, and then like a Yorm in the backline or something.
Sure.
It's just not how my Slays tend to end up.
I feel like with so much scam, though, I really want the maximum number of big units, because one of them is going to get Medusa'd, or one of them is going to get Crab-Appled. And I need some contingency big.
At that point, the big bigs I'm looking for are either Echo Woods in the back to copy my Yorm stats, or Shoulder Fairies, because I've managed to have one unit be evil, one unit be good. Doesn't always work with Lightning Dragons and stuff, but if I'm doing Lightning Dragons, then I'm definitely trying to do Yorm Echo Wood. And again, the other problem with Horn of Olympus is that often I want a unit that isn't a support in my back row, even as Slay,
Yes.
and so at that point, I'm only buffing 2 units. I'm giving 2 supports, affecting 2 extra units. It's just so little. I was very high on Horn Olympus day 1 of this patch. I've come way down. It's completely unplayable outside of Slay. D seems right.
Yeah, it feels like we're ending up in D. You can pretend it's good on Pup. I've pretended it's good on Pup. I still think Pup's very good this patch. Next up, we're moving into 3-drop treasures, kicking things off with our boy. It's Ancient Sarcophagus. Is this S?
No, it is A though. I want to say ahead of time, a lot of these tier 3 treasures are going to end up shockingly high, like higher than the tier 4 treasures. It's not necessarily that they're more powerful, although I'll be honest, a lot of them are. It is that the opportunity cost is so much lower on tier 3 treasures. When I get a synergistic tier 3 treasure, I can warp my life around it in a way that by the time it's 4.2, I can't really do that. It's way harder for me to go, okay, let's go all in on, making Reduplicator good on 4.2. You're on Slay. How are you going to make that happen? That's not how it works. By the time you're on tier 4, you have a comp in mind. Tier 3, you definitely don't. You've just got the biggest random idiots that you could buy most of the time. And so when you see a powerful treasure like Ancient Sarcophagus, you go, okay, cool. I was on this stag sure shot plan. I can replace those. I can pivot. That's completely fine. So yeah, Sarcophagus, gonna end up in A. It's one of the best pumpkin things to be doing. It massively rewards volume rather than quality of units, which again, Evil is very capable of doing. It makes things like Cat's Call a instant win in the mid game. That's kind of disgusting. And if you actually get it during tier 3 damage is a lot at that stage. Also in the mirror, Pumpkin versus Pumpkin, the ability to hit enemy pumpkins ahead of time is really, really big. Pumpkins are 2/2 now. You can snipe it very easily, and that's really strong. I will say, you often have, if you're going into the finals versus dwarves, do replace it. It is actively not very good against a board of all 80/80s that Lordies enable, and when it hits Angries, you're just giving their whole board stats. Replace it. It's not. It can be actively bad, and that's okay. I actually think it's a big part of why Dwarves has a comparatively positive Scam matchup is things like Ancient Sarcophagus matching up so poorly.
Yeah, it's because they can soak up a lot of hits from sarcophaguses or small scam units, small evil units falling out of a pumpkin. Next up, we have Bad Moon, which I guess we'll just put alongside sarcophagus. This is the sarcophagus for Slay.
It's better than Bad Moon does much.
It has less impact immediately. Like, it's less good early, it's less actually good on tier 4. It's only giving you scaling.
God, it's a lot of scaling. The reason I'm debating putting it in S is that I basically don't like Slay that much without it, and I think it sends Slay to the stratosphere. It enables units that you can basically never play without it. Lightning Dragon Mermaid is a combo that is very, very strong, but I can't play without Bad Moon. I pick it like it's S tier, and I think Bad Moon is the reason Slay is viable a lot of the time. Whereas I think Sarcophagus is good in pumpkins, but you do I just said it can be awkward in some matchups, and
evil is already fine.
Yeah, and pumpkins don't need it. Slay needs Bad Moon, and it pays off very quickly. Yes, it's not immediately dealing 12 damage like a sarcophagus does, but after 2 turns, you've got, +2/+4 on a Slay unit, and that means it can more consistently Slay in the future. That's the thing that Slay has always struggled with things like Ogre Princess are really awkward, is that she's a 3/2. She falls off a cliff really, really quickly. Getting +1/+2 every turn helps keep her in that fight, and then when you also give her a Mermaid, she's getting 2 triggers. If you give her Baba Yaga, she's getting 4 triggers. You can...
It means your Grimsoul dies and affects the board. If you have a Bad Moon, picking up a Grimsoul in tier 4 isn't embarrassing.
Exactly. And, the caveat of as Trophy Hunter, it's unbelievably busted.
Yes.
Put a pin in that. Trophy Hunter has quite a different treasure list to some other heroes. But I pick this like it's S in this patch. I've really, really liked it. Yeah, that's where I got
it. Next up is Cloak of the Assassin. This has to be the C or the D?
Yeah, this is C. The thing Cloak of Assassin can let you do is play Mermaid as a +3/+3 to 2 units, which is pretty good. Even as dwarves, Mermaid behind a Triply with a Cloak of Assassin, that's a thing. I can do that. That's cool.
You can Mermaid some stats onto a Tweedledee. You'll have a good time.
Absolutely. In Slay itself, it's just fine, but again, it's a tier 3 treasure. It's a good amount. If you have... The other thing is, the Slay units really want the +3/+3. Ogre Princess, we just mentioned, but Vainpire and stuff, and Chupacabra. Having that +2/+3 initially helps them get the slays that helps them keep getting stronger or paying for themselves or doing whatever. They're units that really want the stats. It's a good amount of stats. If you don't have any Slay units, I'm not speculating on Cloak of the Assassin. I'm not moving into Slay. But when it's good, it is a decent amount of stats, and that's fine.
Bad Moon keeps the ball rolling. Cloak of the Assassin starts the ball rolling. Speaking of the ball, next up we have Crystal Ball. This is the one that I want to argue is S tier.
Okay. I wasn't going to argue lower than A, certainly. But I'll let you talk me around to S.
So S is comp in its own right. And I think Crystal Ball does something that nothing else in the game does, especially now Ninth Book of Merlin has gone away. Without Crystal Ball, you can't reliably get that cascading series of mage triggers that you need in order to build an Aeon Mages or a Wizard's Familiar based comp.
Yeah,
I think it's better than Black Prism for that, because it's like a Black Prism in that it's giving you the same thing. It's giving you 7 spells a turn on average. But true. It's a 3-drop treasure, not a 7-drop treasure.
Yeah, I think the other, Crystal Ball's also one of those treasures where I am often intentionally tripling units that I don't really care about in order to find it. It is one of those heavy direction treasures, right? I'm looking for this Crystal Ball, please. I will say, there are definitely times where I take Crystal Ball speculatively, and if I don't have the other pieces, it is nothing. I have definitely, as someone, especially Wonder Waddle or Horde Dragon, who are often, leaning towards Hat Ball, if you take Crystal Ball first, and then you don't get offered the hat, by the time on, tier 5 and I've had no Hat Ball, I've just had this Crystal Ball that's done almost nothing. Am I meant to move into mages? It's not because what it needs to enable itself is other treasures. I can't have Crystal Ball and go into mages. I can't take Spellweaver just because I have my Crystal Ball. That doesn't work.
But you can take Sporko, and because Sporko's also going to enable the Aeon in a second. Yes, you're a little bit all in on finding the Aeon. If you've found Crystal Ball and no other treasures, Like, you're not in a good position that game.
The issue is that I'm just not willing to, because that doesn't happen till tier 5, and even like one Aeon that has to slay to make it work is not enough for Hatball.
Put a Grimsoul in your comp.
Oh man, okay.
Put a Grimsoul or put a Baba Yaga behind your Aeon. Like, both those things are very doable and give you a turn of Hatball, and that first turn of Hatball is worth so much.
I mean, that's
because once that Aeon hits 20 power, then you're ready to go.
I'm willing to put Crystal Ball in S. I do think I definitely take it speculatively less high than Bad Moon for sure. Like if I was on tier 3 and just had a random mishmash of vanilla units or something, I would definitely take Bad Moon over Crystal Ball, and I think I might even take Ancient Sarcophagus over Crystal Ball on a blank board if I wasn't a hero that had good access to tier 3 treasures like Horde Dragon or Wonder Waddle, or a hero that naturally synergized with it like Merlin. Yes, I'm taking Crystal Ball. Who are you kidding? Potion Master. Yeah. Sphinx.
I might take Sarcophagus over it in this patch, but I think in general, historically in the game, I'd be taking Crystal Ball over
That's fair.
any other 3-drop treasure.
I'm happy to put it in S, even like it is meta defining. You do think about it. You should always think about it when it's offered because it is a direction in and of itself. I think S I think power level it's the bottom of S, but I'm happy to leave it there.
Next up we have Deep Stone Mine. Is this a B? I feel like this might be a B.
No, I don't think so. Like even in dwarves, it's good. It's good in dwarves. Don't get me wrong. It's when you triple your triply and it's a ton of stats. It's a lot of
Complete
stats.
your Princess White. What are you looking for? You're looking to go down the mine.
The issue is it's both narrow, right? Like if you're not dwarves, it's actually completely textless, and it's not comp defining. It's way less comp defining than Ancient Sarcophagus, and I think it's basically the same as Ring of Rage in dwarves. Like it's not an obscene amount.
But as a 3-drop treasure, not a 4-drop treasure.
Yeah, sure. Like it doesn't end up in my late game dwarves comps. It isn't a reason for me to go into dwarves, and as a payoff for being dwarves, it's only double a power orb. Like it's good, but I think it puts me in like it's way worse than everything that's in B right now. I have it in C for sure.
I just like dwarves so much. What can I say? Dwarves really want those stats. Dwarves make really good use of those stats. And I'll tell you what else. Dwarves, especially in the early game when I'm taking Deepstone Mine over some terrible 3-drop treasures, maybe that's the problem. You really need treasures because your crafties need to see that you've picked one up.
Yeah, that's fair. You can't, skip. It's better than skip in dwarves.
That's true. Skip is at the bottom of C, though, not the bottom of B. I'm going to put it at the top of C.
I think that's fine. Like, I don't know. I'm even in dwarves. Deepstone Mine doesn't excite me. Maybe the issue is like if your dwarves is already strong in the mid game. Like what it does is make dwarves strong in the mid game where they're already in a really good place most of the time. Like if you've already got 7 dwarves in your dwarves comp, like if this is the reward you get from tripping your Princess White, I'm already in a really good place most of the time.
I think part of the reason Dwarves is in a good place in the mid-game is because it has Deepstone Mine. I think you're putting the cart before the horse.
Most of my Dwarves comps don't have Deepstone Mine, and don't get me wrong, I'm not taking Fancy Pants over Deepstone Mine in Dwarves, but I am taking Haunted Helm over Deepstone Mine in Dwarves, for example.
Oh man, that would be really close. That would depend on what my comp actually looked like.
So yeah, it's unplayable outside of its comp, and I don't think it's the best tier 3 treasure for Dwarves. So yeah, I can't put it higher than C, and I think even C on other patches it certainly would be D.
That's true. There's definitely, historically speaking, I haven't been taking Deepstone Mine as a high C. I moved it. For listeners at home, I moved it down exactly one place, so it's now behind Moonsong Horn, just for the tilt grade. Next up, we have Eye of Ares. This is a trap, right?
Yeah.
Next up, we have Fancy Pants.
Yeah, there's nothing more to say about Eye of Ares. It's going to benefit your opponent just as much as it benefits you a lot of the time, especially when there's a bunch of scam running around.
Even when it's good, you just tie every game. That's not... Maybe it'll keep you alive, but if you're not killing people, you haven't gone up in power level, you haven't gone up in the lobby.
Yeah, I hate Eye of Ares.
Fancy Pants. This got a lot better recently.
Oh yeah, for sure.
But it still doesn't have that immediate impact. If you get that treasure at the end of a turn, it can be really awkward.
Like, units aren't that expensive. When you get Fancy Pants, because like the issue with a lot of the thing with Excalibur is I need to buy a 6-drop after I get Excalibur, which I definitely can't do at the end of the turn. But if I get Fancy Pants, I'll buy a 2-drop. A 2-drop with +3/+3 is better than all the 3-drops. Like, that's a decent... I won't go down a unit, but again, during tier 3, early tier 4, I often have units in my hand that I'm speculating on. Fancy Pants can be a ton of stats. It enables some units, like, I'll play even not as dwarves. A doubly with +3/+3 is a 7/7. Fine. Totally fine. That's going to last me for a while. Friendly Spirit, Mummy, A ton of units benefit loads from those stats, and it's a lot of stats. +3/+3 every turn. It's almost Coin of Charon, but you get to control where it goes 100% of the time, and
it's front-loaded rather than back-loaded?
And it's front-loaded rather than back-loaded. I really like Fancy... I think B is... I pick it like it's B. I think B is fine. Like, I really like Fancy Pants.
C is low rate and B is medium stats on the definitions that I have here, so I think it's...
Yeah, I think B is fine. Like, I pick Fancy Pants quite highly. I like it a lot. Yeah, it's a good amount of stats that lasts. It's Medusa, another unit that actually +2/+2 gets her to the point where she's killing her statue. A huge... Literally doubling the stats on Medusa makes quite a big difference. Giving Soltak Ancient 3 power makes the unit much, much stronger. There's a bunch of units that benefit a ton from Fancy Pants.
We've got to mention the downside is that you can't freely buy chickens when you see them anymore.
I mean, it's pretty marginal. The actual downside of sometimes you'll accidentally buy a chicken is more relevant.
Next up, we have Haunted Helm, which we've already touched upon. This has to just be C, right? Is this like Fancy Pants? Is this enough stat?
No, I think C. Like, I'm gonna argue for Sting in B as the attack-based equivalent, because there's more you can do with high attack than you can do with high toughness.
That makes sense to me. Enabling things like Slay and Medusa is more important than enabling things like Tweedledee and...
Tweedledee just is enabled by Sting.
Yeah, exactly.
Doubly is the unit that benefits from Helm more. Like, Helm also rewards you for already having one big unit. Like, if you've somehow... Like, if you're tripling a Vampire that had already, between the two Vampires you had, like, slayed, like, 5 times, so this is like a 13-13. Yeah, I would rather have that be a 13-23 than a 23-13, because attack has diminishing returns when you're already one-shotting everything, and actually that unit with 23 toughness can solo teams. That just happens way less often. You know, it's an enabler for you already being strong. I would rather have an enabler for when I'm struggling, and I think Sting does that better than Haunted Helm. And often slot... Again, both of these struggle with slot 1 is surprisingly awkward. You know, sometimes if I've tripled a stag, I want to have an empty slot 1 and then have Stag in slot 2. I really don't want a Haunted Helm in slot 1. That's awful. If I'm Slay and I want Grimsoul in slot 1, don't give me a Haunted Helm. No. Like Friendly Spirit, another one that like really benefits from the stats. I'm happy to play slot 1 Haunted Helm, but it does mean it doesn't die at the right time quite often.
What I was going to say about Sting being better is that with like a Mummy or a Friendly Spirit, you get that stat bonus because it dies. The death is what you want, and so getting to cash it in for a higher value death, potentially trading up with its big ugly sword. Next up is Merlin's Hat. Where do we think Merlin's Hat belongs?
Probably A. Like, Merlin's Hat does a few things. Even if you don't... Obviously, it's part of the Hat Ball combo, right?
Yes.
Like, it's part of one of the strongest things you can do. It's the redundant piece.
As Peter Pants, it's one of the things you're really looking for.
Yeah, it's a redundant piece. There are other ways to find hats, whether that's horn or aeons and stuff, but it's definitely the best of those for doing the Hat Ball thing. It's better than Crystal Ball speculatively, generally speaking. Like, if you ignore the synergy, Merlin's Hat is stronger than Crystal Ball, because you cast spells... Certainly with a hat, you're going to cast a spell every turn of the game. It's basically an econ spell, right? It's at least a spinning gold, and often much better than a spinning gold, because it's 2 gold per turn if you cast a spell that costs 2 or more, and it makes cantrips free as well. Like, it's a ton of gold every turn. Enabling XP spells, Make-A-Wish in particular. The issue with Make-A-Wish is you've spent 5 gold that turn, you're way down in power level. If I only spent 3 gold, I might actually be strong enough to win a fight, and that's really cool. Several heroes have good synergy with spells being cheaper. Potion Master, Merlin, not really Sphinx, but they can pretend.
Certainly in Sphinx, you're more likely to have picked up some units that want spells. Like, that happens.
Sure. Yeah, but it enables units that you wouldn't normally pick. Spellweavers and stuff become a unit that, like, I'm going to cast 1 spell every turn. Almost certainly, because why wouldn't I? Like, it's really hard to not cast a spell every turn when you've got Merlin's Hat. And, yeah, it's really strong. I pick it like it's A. I think A is appropriate. Yeah.
That makes sense to me.
Power Orb next, right?
Next up is Power Orb. This is your flat C, generically good enough stats.
Definitionally C. Never exciting. It's almost always better than skipping if you don't already have 3 treasures, though. The time of the point in the game where you get it, most of the time, it's a really good amount of stat. You know, if you're getting this on your Brave Princess that's slayed on like 4.1, it's disappointing. Like, I'm definitely not excited by those stats anymore. I'll still take it. But the fact you can get it on like 3.1, 3.2, and then it's just a big chunk of the total amount of stats on your board. Good, never exciting. The fact is, it's just fine.
Yeah. Next up we have Telltale Quiver. Is this a D? It might be bottom of C. Like,
No. It's terrible. The issue, so
the stats do work. Like, if you've got Sporkos and Ladies of the Lakes and things, like...
or Court Wizards. Yeah, the issue
Yeah.
is it's unit specific for units that I'm less excited about on this patch than previously. Like, I still take Sporko fairly high, but I'm way down on Lady of the Lake.
Sure.
And it doesn't do anything during tier 3 a lot of the time. Like, yeah, your Shadow Assassin can go back there and be fine, but like...
But tier 3 is often all about the supports, right? You've often got... Your backline can become so crowded with Evil Queens and Good Witches of the North.
Yeah.
Where are you going to put all these ranged units?
I'm never, like, I will take, when I've already got 2 ranged backline, I will take it sometimes if I need the power spike. I am never excited, and I'm never happy.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think we're skipping over it that often, but we're always taking the other 3-drop treasures over it. And certainly I can imagine skipping it.
We have skipped over one. We missed out on Ring of Revenge. So
That's accurate.
Ring of Revenge, I think, is also probably going to go in. So let's compare the numbers on Ring of Revenge to Power Orb. So
Yeah.
Ring of Revenge, in theory,
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
yep. So it's a total of +6/+6. That's less than Power Orb. It's also backloaded, which rather than front-loaded, and yeah, if your backline isn't ranged or whatever, if it's just like some Mims or some Baby Roots, which is a completely normal state to be in, it's pretty irrelevant stats. I think worse than Power Orb is certainly how I feel about it. If you're Geppetto or whatever, you're doing, or you know, you're in Vulture Comp, you're doing Princess Peep summonsy stuff in the front row, you can get more value out of it than a Power Orb. But that's not even true. Summons benefit just as much, almost, from Power Orb as this. I think D is about right. Some comps it's complete trash, and it's never good.
It's a power orb that requires synergy in order to pay you off. Finally, rounding out tier 3, we have Treasure Map, and I think this might be the last of the S's.
Yeah. Treasure Map is so dumb. Like, we've basically been talking about Treasure Map all episode. So many of these tier 5 and tier 6 treasures we had to mention with a caveat. If Treasure Map enables them to be utterly broken. Treasure Map is the most reliable way to get tier 7 treasures, which are game ending. It is a huge part of the reason Celestial Tiger is playable. It's a huge part of why Horde Dragon is S tier. It's a huge part of why Wonder Waddle is really good. Like, Treasure Map is very, very strong. I'm happy to speculate on it at basically any point of the game.
Yeah.
Do sell your Cinderella if you have to. But yeah, Treasure Map, incredible. Always on my mind. It is a power dip to have basically skipped your tier 3 treasure for a few turns. It's so worth it. Yeah, Treasure Map's great. S tier for sure. It defines Storybook Brawl.
Yes.
Yeah.
It may seem odd if you're just looking at the list to put in S tier a treasure that's enabling you to get an A tier treasure, but that A tier treasure ahead of time is S tier.
Yeah, most of the treasures in B are S tier ahead of time. Like,
Accurate. That rounds out the 3-drops. So all that's left now is the 2-drop treasures. There are more of these than any other category of treasure, and they are worse.
Yeah, we're gonna go through these very quickly. I'm gonna point out caveats when they're better than average, but if we just default to putting them in F and then explain why they might not be, I think that's probably fine. I want to talk quickly about tier 2 treasures in general. I very rarely speculate on tier 2 treasures. Once tier 2 is done, I'm not generally very interested in buying pairs of tier 2 units. I see a second, like I got a unicorn in my comp. I don't buy a second unicorn that often. I don't care. A gold unicorn isn't a great unit, and a tier 2 treasure doesn't make the difference very often. Tier 2 treasures are pretty bad, and it's worth highlighting that I often don't even try to go for them, because the ones that are good are in a pool of a billion.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. The way treasure timings often work out is that you get a treasure of the level about the time you enter the next level. Yeah. Like, you'll get your 2-drop treasure 3.0, 3.1. You'll get 3-drop treasures 4.0, 4.1. If you're getting them ahead of they're ahead of the game on rate, and that's when they're really good.
Yeah.
First up, we have Book of Heroes into F. Then we've got Bounty Board into C?
Nah.
D.
I think D.
Bad synergy.
If you're Trophy Hunter, it's A. If you're Sadrak, it's probably A. But the Slay comps are often only slaying with 1 or 2 units, even when you're in Slay in that early game. And at that point, it's a less reliable spinning gold. D seems about right to me.
Corrupted Heartwood, F on every patch except this one, D in this one?
Nope, still F. The worst treasure in the game. Why would you put it up?
Because I want to put a Sultak in front of my pumpkin.
I will play Sultak and as a good unit. I don't care. That's fine. Like costing me a treasure to summon one extra unit off my pumpkin is nothing. That is.
I will tell you, we saw it a lot in the tournament coverage.
Well, people taking Heartwood to enable that.
We saw. I mean, everyone was pumpkins in the tournament. And we saw a lot of Heartwood.
Okay, that is very surprising to me. I think Heartwood is complete. Like, I could talk about this at length. I will play Sultak. Pumpkins don't need all of their units to be evil. Once you've got 2 pumpkins in particular, you really don't need all your units to be evil. I'll play a good Sultak. There's no other good unit that I want to play in my evils comp. And using a treasure slot for that garbage is... I would take 2 gold at basically every stage rather than my Sultak is evil now.
Crown of Atlas. Oh, how we miss Copy Boy. Straight into F.
Yeah, goods aren't in a good place. Animals aren't in a good place. F.
Dancing Sword I'm going to put in D. It has the immediate stats, but I'm still skipping over it most of the time. Dark Contract.
D.
It's probably a D.
It's a lot of tempo. It's crazy good as beauty, obviously. But it will... It can have a lot of immediate impact, and... it can just win you a bunch of fights in a row. It does cause this problem of I need to be buying fresh units every turn. Help. But, you can find a way out of it. The amount of stats it provides at the time you get it is huge. So, D is fine. I can't put it higher than that, though.
Dragon's Nest is the definitional D. This is you really need the synergy. There's only 3 dragons in the game. It can pay you off, but...
I mean, it's so bad. The issue is that it's not good with Doom Breath. That's false. It's not great with Lightning Dragon, because, it's okay. Lightning Dragon being good this patch is probably enough to put it in D rather than F, but, the only time I would ever take this is if I already had at least 1 baby dragon, and even then I'm not excited, and Skip might still be better. D is the bottom of D, is the highest I'm willing to put it. It's way worse than Dark Contract.
And the animation takes so long. And next up is Easter Egg. I guess this is S, right?
No.
But it's so hard to get. And it's the best tier 2 treasure.
It's barely a tier 2 treasure. It's like a tier 0 treasure. No, it's weird. I mean, I'm far from the expert on Easter Egg. I've had it twice lifetime. I think when it's giving you stats, you are winning the fights anyway. It's definitely a get ahead, stay ahead kind of treasure. The total number of stats it gives you is not a huge amount because you're not consistently winning your fights by lots, even when you're Easter Egg. I'm fine putting it in B. I will certainly take it over every tier 2 treasure, and I'm not going to replace it super actively.
I think the reason it's not higher than bottom of B, top of C, is because you have to have invested in such a bad unit in Humpty Dumpty in order to get paid off, quote, by the Easter Egg.
Yeah, and then, especially once your Humpty dies, if you don't have any other golden units, which is completely normal if you're not Fates or Snow Angel, the heroes who actually consistently get Easter Egg.
Waddle.
Waddle? Why Waddle?
You consistently have golden units.
Oh, sure. I was supposed to say Easter Egg. I haven't had Easter Egg on Waddle ever. Not even I've never bought a Humpty on the Waddle.
I've had multiple times I've had Easter Egg on Loki. I digress.
Sure. B is fine. It is a very powerful treasure.
Yeah, it's certainly more powerful than the standard 2-drop treasures.
I think alongside Fairy Queen's Wand makes sense, right? They're hoops you've had to jump through to get here for a treasure that's fine, good.
Yes.
But, the hoops are too hard to put any higher.
Next up, we have Fairy Tale. This is like a C, right?
Yeah, it's probably my favorite of the tier 2 treasures in a vacuum. It's not tempo immediately, though it can be. You can buy another unit that turn. But it very quickly is better than a power orb because it gives your triples +3/+3, and it's future loaded rather than backloaded.
Yes.
And during tier 2 and early tier 3, you're looking to replace those units anyway. So yeah, I like Fairy Tale a lot. I like it more than the Econ as well, because I genuinely think the stats are better than the gold at that stage. But yeah.
Yeah. Next up, we have Fountain of Youth. I think this might be the F compared to Dancing Sword, right? The toughness is so much less likely to be relevant.
At that stage of the game, all stats are stats. I think it's the same.
Okay. Oh, next up we've got Hermes Boots. This is an actual treasure. This is like a B or a high C.
A B makes sense to me. It's not as good on this patch as it used to be. Copycat Good Boy wanted it more than they wanted to be alive. Slay still really, really wants it. But pumpkins and dwarves basically don't care. It's Medusa would like to have a boots. It's really good there.
And they care against a Slay.
Yeah, and your Doom Breath wants it as well. Mate, you know what? It's good in pumpkins. That's just not true to say it's bad. Dwarves don't really care, except that you can stop your opponent going, you can deny your opponent's Medusa from attacking first, give yourself that 1 in 4 rather than that 1 in 8. But it is also worth pointing out, it's pretty bad early. Like, there aren't many, other than, like, Stag, most of the time in those, like, tier 2 to tier 3 fights, it's your units are going to smash into each other. Having yours to do it first doesn't actually matter very much.
Next up is Jack's Jumping Beans. I think, like Fairy Tale, this is enough stats that it makes up for the fact that you tripled a unit in tier 2 or early tier 3.
Yes, the main time I'm taking Jack's Jumping Beans is on 2.2, where I've of the 5 units that I bought, 4 or 5 units I bought at that stage, 3 of them have combined, and I've got like 2 units. I desperately need some stats to make up that tempo, and Beans does a really good job with that. It falls off a cliff really fast.
Yes.
But it's the best one to get. It's one of the best ones to get early. It's a lot of stats then and there. I think C is fine.
Locked Chest is unplayable unless you're Celestial Tiger.
Yeah, even when tier 3 treasures are in a really good place, Lock Chest is really rough. I might take it off Cinderella if I flipped her early enough or whatever. Like,
it's true if you're not close to any other triples, so the space being locked up isn't a problem.
You got the space, yeah. Like, it is really bad though. 3 turns is all of time. Like, by the time you got that, it's the middle of tier 4, and tier 3 treasures have already stopped being that versatile option. If you've already got a hat, a ball even, sometimes it's a good way of finding a hat, but 3 turns is still forever. Yeah, pretty bad. I think F is... It might be D, but I think F's fine.
Monster Manual, even if your slay units aren't monsters.
Yeah, Trophy Hunter, again, likes Monster Manual. No one else does.
Needle Nose, I feel like this is a high C, right?
I'm way down on Needle Nose, but I couldn't tell you why.
You keep losing.
Yeah, the issue is that I keep losing. That's definitely not true. And Dwarves, I think, is the answer. Because Dwarves can quite easily be in this state in the mid-game where they just fucking crush you, no matter how strong you are. So, like, I lose some of my mid-game fights at random a decent amount of the time. In a way that's quite hard to predict, even if I think, you know, there are exceptions. I'm Fallen Angel or something. I'm the Dwarves player. I'm disgusting. Like, if I'm strong enough that I can consistently have Needle Nose stick around, I didn't need Needle Nose. And if I'm not, it often doesn't make it. It can definitely make the difference, right? It can definitely go, my comp was kind of sketchy, but Needle Nose has made it good. But then when the Needle Nose breaks, you've like lent into it with like mummies and cats and stuff, and then the daggers break and your comp is unplayable.
I think the comps where Needle Nose was at its best were like the animals comps that are unplayable at the moment.
Yeah, agreed. I'm pretty low on Needle Nose, but, you know, once bitten, twice shy, basically. Like, it's probably better than I'm giving it credit for.
Yeah. I think it's still in C tier. I think it's still of the playable 2-drops. I think you're still taking it over, like, Dancing Sword most of the time.
Yep.
Be unhappy when it breaks, but it was a 2-drop treasure. It was going to break one day. Next up, we have Noble Steed. This feels like bottom of D, right?
Oh, wow. Wow, I'm way higher than that.
Seriously?
Like, yeah, I really like Noble Steed.
I feel like you need a quest unit, or else it's nothing.
Yeah, but it's really good. Like, if you already have a Brave Princess or a Cinderella ticking, you know, then you take it. But if, like...
You take it and it was a slightly better Runestones. What
yeah.
Talk me up on it.
Like, it can trigger... Unlike Runestones, it can trigger multiple times. It is not uncommon for me to trigger both Nutcracker and Lancelot in a game on this patch. Like, that happens. Like, I pick Lancelot a reasonable amount because I'm playing Slay, and I pick Nutcracker on tier 4 at fine amount. If I haven't already completed a Cinderella in particular, it goes way up. Tier upgrades are really strong. Like, because you're getting the full turn earlier. And the stats are not irrelevant. It definitely helps Brave Princess Slay. It definitely helps Nutcracker be a more relevant unit. Takes Lancelot to a 10-10. It's easy to get 15 stats, I guess.
But we're not playing Royals on this patch. What do we do? Like, I get Lancelot. That makes sense to me. What are we doing with Nutcracker?
Having it in play. It's a 4-10. It's fine. Like, I play Heartwood Elder with a Nutcracker a fine amount. I take Ring of Meteors a fine amount because it's good with dwarves.
I'll put it in C. I probably take it like it's C, but
I'm not. It's way better than everything in D for sure for me. And yeah, I like Noble Steed. Anything that lets me cheat out early treasures is just so valuable. Like, Nutcracker in particular is the one where it's like tier 4 treasures are so trash, and
if you didn't have a Slay unit already and you've just like tripled your Cinderella or whatever, would you take Noble Steed over skipping? Obviously, it's a little board dependent, but Noble Steed and 2 of these random ones.
So yeah, I'm in tier 3. I don't have a Brave Princess yet, but I've already finished Cinderella. No, I would probably skip. If I hadn't seen Cinderella, I would probably take.
I'm leaving it at the bottom of C for now. The next time is Piggy Bank. This is a classic F.
Yeah,
Piggy bank.
you can do some fun Celestial Tiger things, but the mid game's too important, especially now that they've brought pumpkins down to tier 5. It's not what you used to be able to do with Piggy Bank, at least theoretically, is have that tier 5 period where no one is getting much stronger, because tier 5 units were kind of bad when Shoulder Fairies weren't there, when Pumpkin wasn't there. No one is getting that much stronger in tier 5, they're just rolling for XP a lot of the time.
Yeah.
You can sit there banking up that gold, you get to tier 6 later, but you have 36 gold or something by the time you get to tier 6, you get to assemble those tier 6 units faster, you get that massive power spike. You can't do that anymore because the pumpkins come online too soon.
I did try. I just need to vent about this game, I guess. I was Gwen. I got a piggy bank. I was like, let's try piggy bank. I'm not too weak right now. So I saved all of my gold through tier 4. I think I bought one at the end or something. And then tier 5, I had 30 gold going into tier 5. I got a pumpkin. I knighted it. I got all the evils I could find. I came 5th. It was a good game.
Yep.
Don't take piggy bank.
Yeah.
Next up is Ring of Meteors. This feels like the D, right? This, you need the synergy, and it's not necessarily paying you off.
It feels very wrong to put Ring of Meteors in the same tier as Dragon's Nest. Like, Ring of Meteors is genuinely an enabler for some comps, right? Like, I think it pushed, like, C feels wrong, but there are units I can only take when I have Ring of Meteors, and a bunch of the meta comps, dwarves, actively wants Ring of Meteors, right? Greedy in the mid game, Dark Creeper at any point, angry later on. Ring of Meteors, it is a comp that I can still play at tier 5 and not be upset, in a way that is very rarely true of the other tier 2 treasures.
But can you speculatively take a Ring of Meteors before you're close to dwarves or close to creeper? Because I'm not sure you can, because you might have some sure shots lying around.
Yeah, I agree. Like, I'd probably take it over other... I mean, I probably don't take it over Skip without those things, but...
So I think it's top of D. If it's below Skip, it's top of D.
But it's... I don't have to be dwarves. If I have 2 dwarves, like, or Dark Creepers in the shop, which happens all the time, like...
It does happen all the time.
Whereas, for example, if I see Dragon's Nest and there's a baby dragon in the shop, I have to pay 2 to enable this treasure? Exhausting.
I would take a Dragon's Nest with a baby dragon in the shop over Skip. Supports are good right now. Like,
I think I have Ring of Meteors at the bottom of C. I take it over Needle Nose. That's probably not true. I'm happy with top of D, but I think Ring of Meteors is...
Compare it to Noble Steed for me, because it's a very similar discussion to the one we had over Noble Steed.
Sure. I think it's in the same sort of headspace, where, like, when it's enabling my things, it's allowing me to do things that I wouldn't normally do. Like, take a Nutcracker, or, like, speculate on trying to actually work to make a Nutcracker work. Enables Nutcracker. They're both good with Nutcracker. If you don't like Nutcracker, maybe this makes sense.
Yeah, okay, I think this is my problem, is I haven't taken a Nutcracker in the last 2 weeks.
And like, there are comps where Ring of Meteors is devastating. Obviously, sometimes they're also not Darkwood Creeper and you're sad, but that doesn't happen very often. You know whether or not you have a sure shot. You don't know whether your opponent has a sure shot, and killing their sure shot feels great. Killing their Lightning Dragon on 4.0 feels great. You can... And I like...
Killing their Bo Peep at the start of the fight feels great.
Yeah. Like, I like being able to play Darkwood Creeper. I think Darkwood Creeper is a bad unit without enabling, but a really good unit with enabling, and I like expanding my tier 3 unit pool a decent amount.
Next up, we have Ring of Regeneration. This I'm happy to put in C tier.
Yeah, I pick it about C. Like, it with health is surprisingly valuable as a resource. It's worse than spinning gold. I'd rather have a gold than a health, but it's surprisingly close. And yeah, good, never bad. Sometimes worse than Skip, but not always.
Next up, we have Runestones. The problem with Runestones, treasure map is great, we know this. The problem with Runestones is that the next treasure you get, unless you have Cinderella going or something, is very likely to be a 3-drop treasure. And upgrading a 3 to a 4 is so much worse than upgrading something up to a 5 or a 2 to a 3.
Yeah, for sure. I think the most of the time when I take Runestones, it's because I picked up a Cinderella in the mid, I picked up a Cinderella on tier 4 because I'm Hatball or, whatever. And so I know that my next treasure isn't likely to be a 2 or a 3. It's likely to be something better. D sounds about right. I'm certainly not...
It's a really interesting dynamic where it's good late.
I think it's worse than Skip a lot of the time during tier 2 and tier 3, where you need the money to fill out your board and stuff. Later on, it's good, but why are you tripling 2-drop? Like, unless you're Waddle or you're tripling chickens, I don't know how you are tripling 2-drops later on. Dwarves maybe on your crafties, but why? Yeah, I don't know. It's awkward with crafty because you have less total treasures.
Yeah, it happens all the time. Then we have Secret Stash, which is going in just above Skip, though there are times when 2 gold now is worth more than 3 gold in a minute.
Yeah, 3 gold in a minute and 3 health is pretty nice. I have definitely had times where I've taken it and then won all my fights forever and replaced it.
Oh, I'm so sorry that you had to win all your fights. Oh, that must have been so hard for you. Oh, Did you go on to lose that game where you were winning all your fights?
No. Yeah.
That's such a good example of why that's a bad argument. Oh,
Exactly, yeah. Yeah, Secret Stash is better than skipping almost always. It's very good as Celestial Tiger, but yeah, it's fine. I'm not never trying to lose a fight to enable my Secret Stash. Who are you getting? And our penultimate treasure is Shepherd's Sling. Shepherd's Sling is one of these really interesting treasures where actually if you get it on like 2.2, 3.0, it's crazy, and it falls off a cliff real fast. I still think that ends up in C. It's kind of in that jumping beans category of this helps make up for the tempo loss of having tripled a 2-drop. It's really good on Wonder Waddle and stuff. And actually, as like dwarves, a lot of your dwarves are just gonna hang around for a while. It makes that Princess White able to be in play and not make you cry. It's fine. C is right, but it's that tempo. It's the opposite of Runestones. It's good when you get it and falls off very, very quickly.
Finally, we have Spinning Gold. No, sorry, Spinning Wheel.
Another C. It's about the same as Ring of Regen. 1 gold per turn is really solid. It's the hero power of some of the better heroes. Yeah, 1 gold per turn makes a big difference. I will say, 1 gold per turn is a lot when you have 5 gold and a lot less when you have 9 gold. It is more impactful early, but it is one of those ones that it's a ton of cash. It's one of the 2-drops that I'm actively. When I get a 2-drop treasure, these are the kind of things I'm looking for, and not the garbage.
I'll put it up there with Fairy Tale, actually. I think that makes more sense. Any final thoughts on treasures?
Obviously, this has been quite a long episode. We'll see how it ends up in the edit. But yeah, treasures are really interesting. I think it's one of the main appeals of this game, rather than similar games in the genre. I think there's a ton of interesting decision making going on. And, again, remember all the caveats we say. We're not saying you should pick Easter Egg to replace your 9th Book of Merlin. That's ridiculous. A lot of this is about timing. It's all about tempo and when these things come online. And yeah, just kind of take that with a grain of salt. Understand, listen to the words we've said. Don't just look at the image, ideally. And
best time to say that is 2 minutes from the end.
Yeah, I think
if you've got to this point, you're doing the right thing.
And a lot of the stuff we said was a little meta dependent. That meta might change, potentially even before this episode has come out. But we made it clear when this was a meta-based choice, so...
Yes, that's our show. Thank you so much for listening. You can find us on the Discord. I'm Jethro, he's Sythesys. You can follow the podcast on Twitter at 7th Tier Podcast. The number 7, the word podcast. We'll be back next week with the same content, but we'll be saying different words. Until then, don't forget... I'm never trying to lose a fight to enable my secret stash. Who are you kidding? Have a great week.